Before we continue our story, please take a moment to subscribe to HFY Aliens Battle. If you're someone who enjoys thrilling sci-fi tales where humanity rises against impossible odds, then you're in the right place. Now, let's continue to our today's story.
It all began in the quiet void between the stars, far beyond the borders of what the Galactic Empire considered safe space. Out there, past the rim, there wasn't much, just drifting debris, some abandoned mining colonies, and the old relay stations that still pinged silent echoes back into the void. It was the kind of place only machines paid attention to anymore. That's why the detection nearly went unnoticed. At Outpost Sigma 12, a lone monitoring satellite registered an anomaly. A long-range scan caught a faint gravitational ripple, followed by a localized spike in radiation. It wasn't a natural occurrence. The data didn't match any meteor storm or spatial anomaly. It was a signature, barely visible, but artificial. The satellite's AI flagged it for review and auto-sent the data packet to Deep Command Archive 16, located on the Empire's cold and bureaucratic moon of Cal Travis. There, the logs sat idle for hours, buried under routine traffic updates and logistical summaries from mining fleets. Then came the second ping, another outpost, this one located on the far side of the Halo Drift, picked up the same signature. Only this time it was stronger, faster, closer. The system's internal algorithms reran the data through its ship registry. Tens of millions of known vessels, from merchant carriers to ancient dreadnoughts, even derelict ships from the last 1,000 years. No match, not even a partial. The alert was raised to Level 3 surveillance. Still, no one really panicked. The Empire had seen strange things before. Glitches, uncatalogued prototype vessels, maybe some backwater rebellion ship. They could handle it. But the next wave of data changed everything. 37 outposts, spanning across 5 sectors, pinged the object's presence. Each report showed the same thing. It was moving faster than any known vessel in the Imperial fleet. Not jumping through hyperspace. Not using slipstream corridors. It was just moving. Physically. Cutting through real space like a dagger through cloth. Now the warning level jumped to red. Every regional command post received the alert. Admirals were called from their sleep chambers. AI clusters were rerouted from civilian networks to military decryption. And for the first time in over a century, the Empire's early threat detection grid went fully active. High Admiral Valen, a man who hadn't seen real combat in 50 years, stared at the incoming telemetry on his holoscreen. "This isn't possible," he murmured. The object, now confirmed to be a ship, had mass readings off the charts. Its core energy emissions resembled a fusion profile, but the output was anomalous. Too stable, too cold. No known reactor could do that. Its surface temperature was barely above background space levels. No heat plume, no standard propulsion, wake. No external shielding visible. Just a dark, silent ghost gliding across the galaxy. Command scrambled to respond. They dispatched probes, recon drones, even cloaked stealth scouts. But none got close. Every single one either vanished or returned, with static. Even the psychic empaths used in high-level threat analysis refused to go near the thing. One of them collapsed after trying to reach for the ship's emotional signature. She said it was like trying to feel a mountain. Cold, ancient, immovable, and still it kept moving. Toward the core. It bypassed trade routes, ignored patrols, made no effort to cloak itself, because it didn't need to. There was no question now. This ship, whatever it was, had a destination. And the Empire? It had no idea how to stop it. Inside the Imperial High Command Citadel, buried deep within the crust of Cal Travis, the Situation Room was in chaos. Holographic displays flickered with constantly updating data streams. Dozens of military minds, admirals, strategists, threat analysts, stood shoulder to shoulder staring at the floating projection in the center of the room. It was there clear as day. The object no longer labeled as unknown, but simply tagged the ship. High Admiral Valen Mar stood at the edge of the room, arms folded, expression carved from stone. He had seen wars, rebellions, and border skirmishes, but never this, not a threat, not a message, just motion. He turned toward the Empire's central threat AI, a hybrid synthetic intelligence trained on 10 millennia of warfare. "Report," he barked. The AI's voice responded without emotion. "Object trajectory remains constant. Estimated arrival at Sector Prime in 72 hours. Threat classification, unmatched. Countermeasures, inconclusive." "Inconclusive?" one of the analysts shouted from across the room. "We've got over 1,000 dreadnoughts, 20 planetary defense arrays, and 2 hyper rings. How the hell is that inconclusive?" The AI paused, then quietly added, "Object's energy profile suggests it would not engage traditional combat. Estimated counterforce survival probability, 0.09%. The room went silent. They weren't just outgunned, they were outclassed. "Admiral," Mar turned back to the display. "Any communication from it yet?" "Negative," the AI replied. "No known language detected, no encoded pulses, no response to probes, pings, or deep spectrum calls. All attempts at contact have failed." For a moment, no one spoke. It wasn't that the ship refused to respond. It simply didn't need to. Behind closed doors, the whispers had already started. Some believed it was a remnant of the old civilizations, those that came before even the first galactic unions. Others suggested it was a weapon, awakened after eons of dormancy, perhaps built by something long gone. But there was one theory that made even the oldest officers uneasy. Could it be human? The words came from Sub-Admiral Linshow, a quiet figure who rarely spoke. He was one of the last surviving experts on pre-exile species, those early civilizations believed to have either ascended, collapsed, or disappeared entirely. Everyone turned toward him. "Humanity hasn't been seen in over 600 years, someone replied. "Exactly," Linshow said. "We assumed they died out, but what if they didn't? What if they left on purpose?" "Why would they hide?" Mar asked, genuinely puzzled. Linshow's answer came like a cold wind. "Maybe they saw what we were becoming and decided they didn't want to be part of it." The room went quiet again. They had all heard the ancient tales. Earth, once a chaotic blue world, had risen rapidly through the technological ranks. Too fast, too unpredictable. Some historians claimed that early contact with humanity ended in disaster for smaller alien species. Others suggested Earth had simply grown tired of the galaxy's endless wars and turned inward. Either way, their last known transmission was a simple statement, sent in every known language, including their own. "We choose silence." That was centuries ago. And now this ship, cold, silent, unmatched, was headed straight for the Empire's heart. "It still doesn't prove it's them," Mar muttered, almost to himself. "No," Linshow said softly. "But doesn't it feel like them?" The old men and women in the room exchanged glances. Because it did. There was a weight to this thing, not just the physics, but the presence. It didn't come like a conqueror. It came like a reminder. And that's what frightened them most. The order was given. Launch a stealth visual probe. It wasn't a weapon, just a high-resolution drone, designed to approach silently, capture images, and retreat. It was equipped with gravitic shielding and camo systems that had fooled entire fleets before. But this time, they weren't dealing with fleets. They were dealing with something else. The drone was launched from the edge of Sector 12. It curved through empty space, using gravitational slingshots to gain momentum, weaving between asteroid clusters and dormant star fields. Every movement was masked, every signal silenced. And it worked, at least at first. It got close, closer, than anything else had. And then it saw it. The first image returned to command was a simple one, a silhouette against a nebula. But it was unlike anything they had ever seen. The ship was massive, but not in the way Imperial dreadnoughts were massive. Those were bulky, ornate, flaunting power through sheer scale. This ship was different. It was clean, sleek, brutalist. Every line served a purpose. There was no wasted metal, no decorative flair, just cold, efficient engineering wrapped in a black alloy that shimmered like oil over stone. There were no windows, no visible engines, no heat blooms or exhaust trails. Its shape didn't look built to intimidate. It looked built to endure. The recon drone's second image zoomed in. Now they could see the hull markings, tiny, etched lines barely visible unless under the right light. The AI enhanced and analyzed them. They weren't Imperial. They weren't Trade Corps. They weren't any of the 12 known galactic languages, but one analyst, an old linguistic vet from the fringe colonies, recognized the pattern. "It's Latin," he whispered. "Latin?" Mar asked, turning sharply. "That dead earth tongue?" The man nodded, pale as snow. "What does it say?" The room went quiet as the translation scrolled across the screen. "Archangel, vigilance and silence, humanity endures." Silence swallowed the room whole. There was no doubt anymore. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't some myth brought to life. This was human. The drone continued its orbit, capturing more angles. Now they could see faint protrusions along the ship's flanks. Weapon ports, but not like any known design. They didn't glow or hum or pulse, they just sat dormant, silent, waiting. And then the lights came on. It wasn't bright. It wasn't dramatic, just a slow, steady glow across the ship's underbelly, like 1,000 stars waking from a long sleep. And that's when it happened. The drone's feed cut to static, not from a weapon, not from an EMP, not even from interference. It was like the ship noticed it, and then gently asked it to leave. Moments later, the drone reappeared on command sensors, completely intact, hovering dead in space, all systems offline. Like it had been told to go home, Mar stood frozen, staring at the dead drone feed. "It didn't destroy it," he said quietly. "No," someone replied. "It just made a point." Now the entire command structure was on high alert. Messages were sent to every system leader, every fleet admiral, every vassal world governor. The message was simple: humanity has returned. Of course, not everyone believed it. Some said it was a hoax, advanced tech from an upstart world trying to spark fear. Others thought it was an AI experiment gone rogue, a mythological ghost ship dressed up for psychological warfare. But those, in the war room, the ones who saw the images with their own eyes, knew better. Because there was something in that design. Something cold, something disciplined, something familiar. This wasn't humanity from the history books. This wasn't the chaotic, war-torn, emotional species the old records described. This was humanity after silence, after centuries of isolation, after evolution, and now they were here, not knocking, not asking, just watching, waiting, and moving fast. It didn't take long for the news to leak. The Empire had tried to keep it quiet, tried to smother the whispers and bury the sensor data. But rumors in a galaxy this big had a way of slipping through the cracks, especially when the cracks were shaking. A merchant convoy caught a glimpse of the object near the Janus corridor. They didn't get close, but close enough to see the silhouette. One trader snapped a blurry visual and sent it to a private news node, hoping to make a quick credit. Within hours, it went viral across over 2,000 systems, and just like that, the galaxy knew. They didn't know what it was, or where it came from, but they knew it was coming. Civilian broadcasts spun out of control. Holoscreen headlines screamed, "Unknown vessel nearing core." Empire's defenses silent. Is this first contact or final warning? Across the central worlds, people began stockpiling supplies. Some fled the major cities and retreated to deep space colonies. Others didn't run. They rallied, armed their ships, and prepared to defend their sectors. But none of it was coordinated, because even the military didn't know what to do. On the political front, the ripple effect was immediate. Planetary governors began issuing emergency declarations, though most tried to spin it as an advanced scouting vessel or classified military drill. But the people weren't buying it. In the Imperial Senate, chaos reigned. Delegates screamed over one another, demanding answers, denouncing secrecy, accusing rivals of orchestrating psychological attacks to destabilize trade routes. And beneath it all, one phrase kept rising to the surface, spoken first in hushed tones, then louder, until it was on every diplomat's lips. The humans are back. The idea had always been there, lurking in old textbooks and conspiracy feeds. A species that rose too fast, that learned too much, that vanished without a trace. Some believed Earth had destroyed itself, unable to survive its own wars. Others claimed they'd simply disappeared by choice. Now the theory no longer felt like fiction. In the academic halls of the Galactic University on Tarsus IV, ancient records were dusted off. Archaeologists began re-examining long-dismissed Earth relics. Linguists cross-referenced ancient languages with the drone's scan of the ship's hull, and historians, they grew nervous because something else began to surface, something buried, in deep archives redacted and hidden by previous imperial regimes. Old war reports, classified ones, documents that described human weapon systems that never made it into public records. Ship designs unlike anything seen in the galaxy. A technological leap that happened too fast to explain, too fast to control, and then nothing. A total silence. Not defeat, not surrender, just disappearance. Now it was as if they were watching. That silence moved toward them at incomprehensible speed. Even the older species, the ancient ones who barely involved themselves in galactic politics, began to stir. The Valens, who hadn't left their gas giant cities in over 300 years, held a rare council. They looked at the image of the Archangel and said, "That is no experiment. That is a return." In secret chambers, some Empire strategists proposed preemptive attacks. Hit it before it reaches the core, they argued. Show strength before it makes a move. But Mar shut them down. "No," he said. "We've seen what it can do without even lifting a finger. We send a fleet and we won't get a war, we'll get a lesson." What lesson? That we're not in charge anymore. Elsewhere in the Empire, rogue systems began arming themselves. Not against the Archangel, but against each other. They feared collapse, feared opportunity. Power vacuums never stayed empty long in the galaxy. The Empire's illusion of control was cracking. And all the while, the ship kept moving. It didn't broadcast demands. It didn't slow down. It didn't explain itself. It simply advanced. And, somewhere deep in the minds of billions, a single thought echoed, unspoken but understood. What kind of civilization builds a ship like that and sends it alone? The Archangel arrived in orbit above the Empire's capital moon just before the fourth cycle's sunrise. There was no announcement, no theatrics, no show of force. It simply appeared. One moment, the sky was clear, stars blinking over the imperial spires of Veltris Prime. The next, it was there, a black silhouette blotting out the stars. Not through any jump gate, not from hyperspace. Just there. Sensors confirmed it hadn't used any known transit method. No wormhole opened. No flash of light. It had entered real space as if the laws of physics had made an exception. Panic didn't start immediately. For the first few minutes, it was disbelief. And then the alarms began. Planetary shields came online. Defense rings powered up. The air traffic grid shut down. Civilian ships were ordered to land or flee. The Empire's orbital forces scrambled. To their posts. 212 warships, everything from sleek interceptors to the massive dreadnought Talon of Sovereignty, aligned themselves around the capital. The Archangel did nothing. It didn't shift position. It didn't scan. It didn't even rotate to track incoming fighters. It just floated there, silent, watching. Admiral Mar, now stationed aboard the command ship Pillar Ascendant, stared at it through the reinforced viewport. He felt it in his chest. Not fear, but gravity. The ship didn't threaten, it didn't boast, it simply was. He turned to his officers. "Has it hailed us?" "Negative," they replied. No signal, no demands, no movement. Another voice spoke up. 15 squadrons are in position. We await your command. Mar hesitated, then shook his head. No. Hold. But sir, it's above our capital. I know where it is, and I also know what it's not doing. It's not attacking. It's not provoking. Another pause. Then came a whisper from the comms deck. Sir, we have a signal. The entire command bridge froze. Source? The officer looked pale. The Archangel. The room waited. It's not encrypted, just a single tone, followed by a language packet. Translate, the machine word, processing, decoding. Then the words came through, broadcast across every open frequency. Military, civilian, encrypted and unencrypted alike. We are the legacy you abandoned. We are the silence you ignored. We return not to conquer, but to remind you. Humanity remembers. The voice was calm, male, not synthesized, not aggressive. It sounded tired, like someone who had traveled too far, for too long. Then the signal ended. No follow-up, no instructions, just that one message, and with it came understanding. Because beneath the bravado, beneath the military formations and sensor sweeps and protocol manuals, everyone knew what they had just heard. It was not a threat. It was a statement of presence. Re-entry a reveal, and still, the Archangel didn't move. The Empire's fighters circled at a distance. Their targeting system scrambled to lock on, but no matter how close they flew, they never got a clean read. And those that pushed too close? They vanished. No explosions, no wreckage, no distress signals, just gone. And moments later, returned. Intact. Engines dead. Pilots alive but shaken. One of them, Lieutenant Cavil, was pulled from his ship in a daze, whispering the same thing over and over. I saw it. From the inside. Medical AI tried to stabilize his vitals, but he kept repeating it. No controls, no crew, just stars. Endless stars. And something watching me from behind them. The command deemed him unfit for duty. But others who had similar near flybys returned with reports of visual anomalies, temporal drift, sensor hallucinations. Some even described hearing music. Not like instruments, more like vibration, like memory. It didn't make sense, and the ship still made no move. It didn't challenge, didn't approach, didn't fire, and yet, it owned the sky. Across the capital moon, billions of eyes turned upward, most for the first time in their lives. They looked not with curiosity, but with reverence, with fear, because they knew they weren't looking at an enemy. They were looking at a mirror from the past, one that said, clearly, and without rage, this is what you left behind. This is what you forgot, and the galaxy was finally remembering. The transmission came 12 hours after the Archangel's arrival. By then, the Empire had tried everything. Second contact protocols, high-frequency psionic pings, even ancient beacon codes buried in galactic history. Nothing worked, and then, without a prompt, the ship responded, not as a weapon, not as a fleet, but as a voice. It echoed across every channel, not with volume, but with clarity, spoken in Earth-standard English, seamlessly translated into every major galactic tongue within milliseconds. The voice sounded human, confident, but not arrogant, calm, but unshakably firm. To the civilizations of the galaxy, you once knew us, you once feared us, and then you forgot. There was a pause, long enough to let the weight of those words settle. We did not vanish. We chose silence, not because we were weak, but because we watched what this galaxy had become, and we wanted no part of it. Now the feeds across the Empire, both public and military, were frozen, streaming the message directly. No one could turn away. We watched you war over resources. We watched you build empires on the backs of lesser species. We saw the way diplomacy was traded for domination. We saw the cost of order. The camera feed activated for the first time. It showed the speaker. A human, middle-aged, gray at the temples, standing tall in a minimalist uniform without ranks or insignia. Behind him, nothing but a panoramic view of the stars. No throne, no banners, no symbols of power, just a man and the silence of space. We were not lost. We advanced. The background shifted, showing flashes of human colonies far beyond known space. Planets bathed in light, cities that shimmered with energy fields never seen before. Vast libraries of thought, children learning beside AIs, nature intertwined with technology. We left to evolve, not escape. We built in quiet. We unified without conquest. And we waited. His eyes focused directly into the camera, as if staring into the soul of every being watching. And now, we return, not to reclaim, but to warn. That line shattered any illusion of calm in the Empire's high command. Mar stood frozen on the command deck, every eye locked on the feed. You have brought this galaxy to the edge. Your balance is illusion, your alliances, temporary, and your weapons, obsolete. The feed shifted again. Now it showed the Archangel, surrounded by the Empire's finest warships. Then, in real time, it pulsed. A wave of energy swept out silently. No explosions, no chaos, just sudden stillness. Every Imperial ship around it went dark. Shields dropped. Power levels bottomed out. Pilots inside their cockpits blinked as every interface turned to static. And then, systems rebooted. Power returned, but something had changed. Every ship now carried a new signature on their scanners. Observer present. The voice returned. We will not intervene, unless we must. This is not an invasion. It is a checkpoint. The human leaned forward. If you threaten the innocent, if you twist truth into terror, if you continue to believe might makes right, he paused. Then we will remind you. Humanity does not forget, and we are no longer alone. Silence followed, not the silence of empty space, but the kind of silence that follows thunder, that long, deep quiet where the world shifts, and nothing ever feels the same again. Across the galaxy, civilizations reeled, some wept, others raged, a few knelt before screens, but all understood. Humanity hadn't returned as warriors. They had returned as something greater, not rulers, not conquerors, but witnesses, and perhaps judges. The Empire didn't take kindly to ultimatums. For all their unease, all their fear, the pride of centuries could not be erased by a single ship, no matter how advanced. The ruling elite had built their dominion through force, not negotiation, through conquest, not compromise. And that old instinct, it didn't die easy. The Emperor himself, Lord Kale Tyros, summoned his war council behind sealed citadel doors on Veltris Prime. No broadcasts, no witnesses, just steel, power, and pride. What we face, he said, is not a god. It is not a ghost. It is a relic. A machine made by humans who once fled this galaxy like frightened children. And now they return thinking they can dictate. To us? He slammed a clenched fist on the Blackstone table. I will not bow to memory. He authorized a strike. A fleet of 20 warships led by the dreadnought Oathkeeper was ordered to engage the Archangel, not to destroy it, but to surround, pressure, and if possible, board it. Capture the vessel, dissect it, prove the Empire still held dominion. Across the capital moon, the people watched in silence as the ships moved into formation. The skies buzzed with fighter trails, the air full of tension. Soldiers prepared for what they thought might be the greatest battle in history. But no battle came. As the fleet closed in, the Archangel did not shift. It did not raise shields. It did not flee. And then, just as the Oathkeeper approached to initiate a scan, Everything stopped. Not time. Not matter, but them. The entire fleet froze in place. Engines still ran. Power levels held steady. But no control systems responded. Pilots screamed into dead comms. Bridge officers pressed buttons that no longer worked. Even the shipboard AIs shut down mid-sentence. Then something began to unfold. From the Archangel's hull, light spilled outward, soft and silver, not bright. It didn't flash. It didn't explode. It opened. A single doorway formed, not with metal, but with layered fields of energy, transparent yet impossible to see through. Like a rift in space, humming with frequencies beyond comprehension, and from that doorway, a pulse was released. No one died. No ships were harmed. But every war system in those vessels, every weapon, every shield, every scanner, went dark. Not disabled, deleted, wiped out at a structural level. Gone, as if they'd never been installed, and then everything came back online. But now those ships were marked. On every interface, every system, a single line of text blinked steadily. You have been spared. Across the command halls of the Empire, silence reigned. Admiral Marr, still aboard, Pillar Ascendant, couldn't believe what he was seeing. No casualties, his officers confirmed. No resistance, just shutdown. The Empire had thrown its best at the Archangel, and it hadn't even flinched. News of the failed assault spread fast. Civilian networks couldn't suppress it. Whispers turned to rebellion. High-ranking commanders began abandoning their posts, some defecting, others simply vanishing. In the outer sectors, governors declared neutrality. Entire fleets deactivated their weapons. Peace movements, once mocked as foolish, now surged in popularity. Old enemies of the Empire, long suppressed, now dared to speak aloud. If the humans stand watch, they said, perhaps it is time the Empire learned to kneel. Lord Tyros raged. He ordered more attacks. But no captain followed them. He issued decrees, but no fleet moved. He threatened, and was ignored, because his empire, built on fear, on silence, on unquestioned control, had finally encountered something that could not be silenced, not with guns, not with laws, not with death, but with presence, with truth, with something older than fear, accountability. The Archangel had not fired a single weapon, but it had dismantled an entire regime of belief, with just a signal and a doorway of light. And, in the space that remained, where once pride and arrogance stood, now grew doubt, and in some, hope. Because for the first time in generations, the stars had shown them something greater. Not a conqueror, not a savior, but a reminder of what they had once been and what they could still become. The Archangel remained in orbit for 3 full days. It never moved. It never fired. It never sent another message. And yet, those 3 days unraveled centuries of power. On the capital moon, the Imperial Senate voted to dissolve itself for the first time in history. The Emperor vanished from public view, his final speech never broadcast. Whispers said he'd fled the inner core. Others believed he remained locked inside his throne chamber, alone, surrounded by silence. Across the galaxy, things began to shift. In the outer colonies, systems that had long lived under the shadow of fear began speaking freely. Treaties once forced under duress were torn up and rewritten. Smaller civilizations emerged from hiding. Old alliances reformed. And throughout it all, one name echoed in every conversation, every council chamber, every late-night holofeed: Earth. But Earth itself remained hidden. The Archangel gave no coordinates, no invitations, no path back to its home. It just hovered in the sky, unreachable, untouchable. And that, in itself, was the message. It wasn't about returning to rule. It was about reminding the galaxy of something it had long forgotten. What? It meant to evolve without corruption, to build without conquest, to advance without arrogance. On the 4th day, just before the moons aligned, the Archangel powered up. It didn't jump, It didn't vanish. It simply accelerated, and within seconds, it became a streak of light that curved up away from the capital world and disappeared into the stars. No trace, no trail, no way to follow. It was gone, but its presence lingered. The Human Watch, as it became known, became a symbol. Some feared it. Some worshipped it. Others studied every signal fragment it had left behind, hoping to learn what made it possible, hoping to understand the science or the philosophy of a civilization that had chosen not to dominate, but to observe. In time, the empire would fracture, not through war, but through reformation. Worlds began to govern themselves. Trade routes opened without taxes or tributes. Education became universal. Military recruitment plummeted. It wasn't peace. Not entirely, but it was progress, and that was something the galaxy hadn't seen in a long, long time. As for Earth, no one knew. There were theories. Some said it had moved itself, hiding in folded space or shielded behind gravity wells. Others believed it now existed in a dimension adjacent to this one, still watching, still waiting. But the truth? It didn't matter, because the point had been made. Humanity hadn't disappeared. It had simply stepped back until it was needed again, and now the galaxy knew. If the old ways ever returned, if tyranny rose again, if the stars darkened once more, then so would the Archangel, not to punish, not to destroy, but to remind that, somewhere out there, across the distant reaches of space, there was a species that remembered what the galaxy had forgotten. That true strength doesn't scream, it doesn't crush, it endures, it watches, and when the time comes, it speaks. Closing line. Optional for the end of your video. So the next time a shadow falls across the stars, look closely, because it might not be an enemy. It might just be a ship with no name, no flag, and a quiet message. We're still here, and we still remember.